At 5 feet 10 inches and 185 pounds, Guy Lafleur wasn't built like other hockey superstars of his time. But what made him stand out wasn't his size. It was his speed, his flowing blonde hair, and a shot that goalies feared. They called him the Flower, but there was nothing delicate about him. In the 1970s, when the NHL was full of tough guys and fighters, Lafleur changed the game by simply being too fast to hit. He would grab the puck in his own end, turn on the jets, and suddenly he was gone, like a bullet shot from a gun. While other players wore helmets and kept their hair short, Lafleur refused to wear one and let his blonde hair flow in the wind as he raced down the ice. Every time he touched the puck, fans at the Montreal Forum would jump to their feet. They knew something magical was about to happen. Between 1974 and 1980, he didn't just play hockey, he created art on ice, scoring more points than any other player in the NHL. But even more than his 5 Stanley Cups and his Hall of Fame career, Lafleur became the face of hockey in Quebec, a hero who proved that speed and skill could beat brute force. In this video, we'll talk about Lafleur's incredible run with the Montreal Canadiens in the 1970s, how he became Quebec's favorite son despite a tough start, and how he turned into hockey's most exciting player by doing things his way. When Lafleur first joined the Montreal Canadiens as the #1 overall pick in 1971, fans were expecting him to step right into the shoes of the legendary Jean Béliveau. Instead, they got a young player who struggled to score just 29 goals in his first 3 seasons. The media called him a bust, and Montreal fans, who were used to Stanley Cups, were getting impatient. But everything changed in 1974, when Lafleur decided to do something that would change his career forever. He switched to a curved stick and let his natural skating style take over. Suddenly the goals started coming. He didn't just score, he put up numbers that seemed impossible. 6 straight seasons of at least 50 goals, 766 points in just 6 years. 4 straight years leading the league in scoring. He wasn't just scoring goals, he was doing it with a style that made hockey look like an art form. When he finally hung up his skates for good in 1991, his impact went far beyond the statistics. He showed that you could play hockey with flair and still win. In a league that valued toughness above all else, Lafleur proved that speed and skill could be just as effective. It all started in a small town in Quebec, where a young boy would spend hours on frozen ponds dreaming of playing for the Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens had been the NHL's most dominant team since the 1950s. Winning numerous Stanley Cups and producing legendary players like Maurice Richard and Jean Béliveau. But by 1971, their dynasty was starting to show cracks. Their longtime captain, Jean Béliveau, had just retired, and the team needed a new French-Canadian star to connect with their passionate Quebec fans. That's when the Canadiens pulled off one of the most important trades in hockey history. They convinced the California Golden Seals to trade their first overall pick in the 1971 draft by offering them veteran players and cash. The reason was simple. There was a junior hockey player in Quebec who was breaking every scoring record in sight. Playing for the Quebec Ramparts, Lafleur had just scored an incredible 130 goals and 209 points in just 62 games. Even more impressive, he led his team to the Memorial Cup Championship, scoring 43 points in just 14 playoff games. The Canadiens couldn't afford to let another team draft him. When draft day came, Montreal didn't hesitate. With the first overall pick, they selected
from the Quebec Ramparts, Guy Lafleur,
making him the first French-Canadian player ever taken first overall in the NHL draft. The pressure on Lafleur was immense from day one. Local media called him the next Jean Béliveau, and fans expected him to lead the Canadiens back to Stanley Cup glory immediately. The expectations only grew when Marcel Dionne, picked 2nd overall in the same draft, immediately became a star with the Detroit Red Wings. While Dionne was scoring 77 points in his rookie year, Lafleur managed just 64. Fans started to question if the Canadiens had made a mistake. Montreal newspapers began comparing his statistics to Dionne's daily, and some even suggested trading him. But Canadiens general manager Sam Pollock stood firm. He saw something in Lafleur that others missed. A unique combination of speed and skill that just needed time to develop. From the first moment Lafleur touched the puck in a Canadiens uniform, everyone could see his incredible speed. During his first NHL game in October 1971 against the New York Rangers, he showed flashes of brilliance that made fans lean forward in their seats. But turning that raw talent into consistent scoring was a challenge. In his first season, he scored just 29 goals. Not bad for a rookie, but nowhere near what people expected from a first overall pick who had dominated junior hockey. The pressure really started to mount in his second season. While Lafleur struggled to find his scoring touch, Marcel Dionne was lighting up the league with Detroit. Reporters kept asking coach Scotty Bowman why Lafleur wasn't producing like Dionne. The criticism got worse when Lafleur managed only 28 goals in his second season. Fans who had cheered his selection at the draft were now wondering if he could handle the pressure of playing in Montreal. But in 1974, something clicked. Lafleur finally decided to ignore what everyone was telling him and play his own way. He switched to a curved stick, which allowed him to shoot with more power and accuracy. He stopped trying to play the dump and chase style his coaches wanted, and instead used his speed to carry the puck end to end. Most importantly, he let his hair grow long and refused to wear a helmet, creating his trademark look of blonde hair flowing behind him as he raced down the ice. The results were immediate and spectacular. In the 1974-75 season, Lafleur exploded for 53 goals and 119 points. His end-to-end rushes became must-see events. Fans would stand up every time he touched the puck, knowing something exciting was about to happen. During one game against Boston, he scored a goal that perfectly showed what made him special. He picked up the puck behind his own net, weaved through the entire Bruins team at full speed, and fired a shot into the top corner without ever slowing down. By the end of that season, no one was comparing him to Marcel Dionne anymore. Lafleur had created his own style, one that combined blazing speed with spectacular skill. The French media gave him a new nickname, Le Démon Blanc, the Blonde Demon, because of how he would seemingly possess the puck and terrorize opposing teams. The shy young player who had struggled under pressure was gone, replaced by a confident superstar who played the game with pure joy. Despite his individual success, Lafleur's relationship with coach Scotty Bowman was complicated. Bowman was known for strict defensive systems and structured play, which went against Lafleur's free-flowing, creative style. During one game in 1976, Bowman benched Lafleur for almost an entire period because he kept ignoring the team's defensive strategy. After the game, Lafleur exploded in the media, saying hockey is about scoring goals, not playing like robots. The conflict reached its peak during the 1976 Stanley Cup playoffs. Bowman wanted Lafleur to play a more defensive game, especially against the Philadelphia Flyers' aggressive style. Before Game 3 of the finals, he threatened to reduce Lafleur's ice time if he didn't backcheck more. This created tension in the locker room, with some players supporting Bowman's system and others backing Lafleur's offensive approach. The pressure of playing in Montreal only made things worse. Every mistake was analyzed by dozens of reporters, and the French media often painted Bowman as the villain trying to restrict Quebec's biggest hockey star. Lafleur started skipping team meetings and arriving late to practices. His teammates noticed he was becoming more isolated from the team. Things hit rock bottom during a regular season game against Toronto in 1977. After Lafleur was on the ice for 3 goals against, Bowman called him out in front of the entire team during the second intermission. Lafleur threw his stick across the room and stormed out. The next day, newspapers across Quebec carried headlines about the clash between the team's biggest star and its legendary coach. Something had to give. Either Lafleur would adapt to Bowman's system, or the Canadiens would have to choose between their coach and their superstar. The turning point came after a private meeting between Lafleur, Bowman, and Canadiens captain Yvan Cournoyer in early 1977. Cournoyer, who had played with both offensive flair and defensive responsibility throughout his career, helped bridge the gap between coach and player. During that meeting, Bowman made a compromise that would change everything. He would let Lafleur play his creative style in the offensive zone if he committed to back-checking when needed. The change in Lafleur's game was immediate. Instead of completely ignoring defense, he started picking his moments. He would back-check hard when necessary. But once the Canadiens got the puck, Bowman gave him the freedom to create. This new balance led to Lafleur's best season ever. In 1977-78, he scored 60 goals and 132 points, winning both the Art Ross and Hart trophies. More importantly, his relationship with Bowman transformed from conflict to mutual respect. Bowman later admitted that learning to adapt his system to Lafleur's talents made him a better coach. He started using Lafleur's speed as part of the team's defensive strategy. Opposing teams became so worried about Lafleur's breakaway potential that they played more cautiously. The rest of the team noticed the change. Lafleur started showing up early for practices and taking a leadership role in the locker room. Young players like Pierre Larouche and Pierre Mondu credited him for teaching them how to balance creativity with responsibility. The former Rebel had become a team leader, and the Canadiens were about to enter the most dominant period in their modern history. From 1976 to 1980, Guy Lafleur dominated hockey in a way few players ever have. He strung together 6 straight seasons of over 50 goals and 100 points, something no NHL player had done before. In 1977, he led the Canadiens to one of the most dominant seasons in NHL history. The team lost only 8 games all year, and Lafleur scored 136 points, including a career-best 56 goals. The 1979 playoffs showcased Lafleur at his absolute peak. In a crucial Game 7 against Boston, with Montreal trailing 4-3 late in the third period, Lafleur scored one of the most famous goals in hockey history. With just minutes left, he took a pass at center ice, streaked down the right wing, and fired a shot that beat Jerry Cheevers to tie the game. Montreal would win in overtime and go on to capture their 4th straight Stanley Cup. During this golden period, Lafleur's achievements piled up. 3 scoring titles, 2 Hart trophies as league MVP, and 3 Lester B. Pearson awards as the player's choice for best player. But his most impressive record came in 1977 when he scored 28 game-winning goals, a single-season record that still stands today. By 1980, he'd become the first player in NHL history to score 50 goals and 100 points in 6 consecutive seasons, a testament to both his incredible skill and remarkable consistency. Yes, Guy Lafleur never won another Stanley Cup after 1979. Yes, injuries forced him into an early retirement in 1984 when he was just 33 years old. And yes, his comeback attempts with the Rangers and Nordiques weren't as magical as his prime years in Montreal. But what Lafleur gave hockey was something more important than just statistics. He showed that the sport could be beautiful as well as brutal. In a time when the NHL was dominated by the rough-and-tumble Philadelphia Flyers and their Broad Street Bullies style, Lafleur proved that speed and skill could still win championships. His end-to-end rushes, with that famous blonde hair flowing behind him, inspired a whole generation of French-Canadian players like Patrick Roy and Mario Lemieux to believe they could make it to the NHL. Even today, more than 30 years after his final game, fans in Montreal still talk about Lafleur's spectacular goals and his impact on Quebec culture. That's why they called him the Flower, because like his nickname suggests, he brought beauty to hockey when the sport needed it most. If you enjoyed this story about hockey's most electrifying player, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible sports stories. Thanks for watching.